Jennifer Runyon at Solar Power International 2010. My guest right now is Robert Lahey. Robert is Vice President of Investment Banking at Ardour Capital. Welcome.
Thank you.
Robert's also the legislative specialist with the firm and has been writing on RenewableEnergyWorld.com about the legislative situation in D.C. in the U.S. right now. So talk a little bit about the landscape. I mean, if we look back to when Obama first took office, do you feel like we've made some gains with clean energy, or are we still struggling?
First of all, thank you, Jennifer, for having me, and thank you, Renewable Energy World, for hosting this wonderful conference and coverage and covering it. Ardour's been focused since 2002 solely on clean technology, but it's really been only in the last 2 years that solar's been a real force in the United States. And I think you have to credit the Obama administration with that change. He's been the greatest industry advocate one could ask for. Government spending is at an all-time high, and it's really a critical time when it's been a pretty rocky period on Wall Street the last 24 months, and it's been really critical to have such support.
Right.
That said, I think it's pretty disappointing that it could have been so much more.
Yeah.
The last 2 years. 2009, the stars were aligned in a way that I don't think they will be till a new administration in terms of passing clean energy legislation. I think two big mistakes were made. One, the administration really chose to spend all of its time and energy and political capital on the healthcare debate.
Yeah.
And the other was that I don't think they did a good job of dealing with the environmentalists. Specifically, I think cap and trade should have been taken off the table in late 2009.
Okay.
It was barely possible in 2009.
Yeah.
But in 2010, an election year, with the loss of Senators Kennedy and Byrd, I think it was completely impossible. And the fact that they pushed for cap and trade as the centerpiece of a clean energy legislation is why they wound up with nothing.
Yeah.
So I think it was a real lost opportunity. But net, it's been a tremendous positive driver, and we look for more growth in it.
Yeah, so some good gains. So do you feel that there'll be any carbon legislation at all then? No.
I think the EPA is going to do what it can, and I think it will have an incremental positive force. But it's simple math. The 60 votes just aren't there, unfortunately.
Just don't have.
And it looks like it's going to get worse.
Right. So, Robert, there's also been a lot of promises made about clean energy and job growth and job creation. And, tracking the industry, I haven't seen a lot of jobs created. Would you agree with that? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yes and no. I would disagree on the installation part of it. Specifically for solar, we're looking for 100% growth in the United States in 2010, another 100% in 2011. So I think there are a lot of jobs. I think your question, though, is probably directed more at the manufacturing, which is really important for economies like Ohio and Michigan. And I think there are areas where policies could be tuned better.
Yeah.
The two big ones that come to mind are the loan guarantees and the manufacturer's tax credit. The loan guarantee program, I think a lot of the real heavy lifting has been done. It was difficult for the administration to get the right quality and quantity of people in that group within the Department of Energy. But I think they've done a great job so far. Now all they have to do is have Congress stop raiding the coffers and the OMB to stop being a bottleneck.
Yeah.
And it should be easy, but unfortunately we're not seeing it so far. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement on that end on the manufacturers' incentives, but also the manufacturer's tax credit, the MTC. That was $2.3 billion that the administration put from the stimulus bill originally, and I think it was a mistake to do a tax credit. I mean, it's the kind of program that really should favor the entrepreneurs. The thin film solar guys in the U.S. looking to build their first commercial facility, 100 megawatts or something like that. These type of entrepreneurs typically don't have a need for tax credits.
Right.
So what happened was the $2.3 billion really went to the larger players that could afford to do it anyways.
Right.
And another interesting trend there we saw with the $2.3 billion, it really went towards a lot of large corporations that are doing their heavy lifting in Asia. Specifically for solar, they'll make the ingots, wafers, and cells in Asia, and then they'll ship the cells to the U.S. and have module assembly facilities,
right.
Which is not where most of the labor is. And I think that highlights a real long-term challenge. I think the U.S. is going to be a tremendous end market, and I think there are areas where we can improve the manufacturing. But I also think it's going to be very challenging to compete with the Asian low-cost structures.
Well, I'm glad you brought up China, because I wanted to ask you a little bit about their legislative situation in China compared to the U.S. I mean, what have they done differently that's made their sector grow so much faster?
Well, I would take issue. I don't think it has grown in terms of an end market.
Okay.
They're very much
not an end market, right? But as a manufacturing base.
Yeah. Well, they don't have the red tape. I mean, they have programs almost akin to the loan guarantee department, but it doesn't take 3 or 4 years to secure a slice of funding. They've really been highly efficient because of their government structure, and that's the reason. Plus their low labor costs. I think it's going to be very challenging to compete, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they do as an end market, because although they haven't been a real force in terms of installations, I think they will eventually. It's just a question of when. Just a question of when
for that. And what about China? They have a strong feed-in tariff, and that's been driving the market for. Germany.
Yeah.
That's been driving the market for a long time. And is that the kind of policy we'll ever see in the U.S.?
I don't think so. I think the entire solar industry should be very grateful to Germany for having that kind of structure, and that's what really created the scaling benefits that have allowed prices to come down. But there's a few differences between the U.S. and Germany. The one obvious one is just as a culture. We don't have Green Party members in Congress, as they do in a lot of European countries. So I don't think we could ever, have a real, comparable support system. But also, I think the U.S. is a decentralized system, and I think for a good reason. Well, I think there are things Washington should do, like a federal RPS, like expanding the powers of FERC for interstate transmission. Well, there are stuff they can do. I think the U.S. is a far more complicated and diverse of a market in terms of its economies, in terms of its natural resources, for a national one-size-fits-all feed-in tariff. I don't think it would be sustainable, and I think in the long run it wouldn't benefit solar to have such a system.
Interesting. What about a federal RPS? Do you see that happening?
I'm not optimistic. It all depends on the election. I really think there was a golden opportunity to pass something. It didn't. Senator Bingaman is proposing a standalone during a lame duck, which I'm not extremely optimistic about. I think it's a great idea that should have been proposed a year ago.
Yeah.
I think it will be tough to get that through. It came up with 59 votes back in late 2007. So I think it could, but it's not a guarantee. But you're really looking at the next Congress, and the way it's looking, it looks like Democrats are going to potentially lose the House and have a weaker Senate. And in that scenario, I think the only way you really get a federal RPS through, or any clean energy legislation for that matter, is to have serious compromises with the Republicans. And what the Republicans want is nuclear energy to have a role in an RPS, and they also want continued commitment for offshore drilling, natural gas vehicle incentives. And I think Democrats, including the White House, are going to have to compromise, if anything is to come, in terms of new clean energy legislation. And I'm waiting to see what the election results are, but also note that the scenario I just laid out would be a radical shift from the present in terms of the way the two parties are working together. Elections have a way of making politicians reevaluate their stances, but as of right now, I don't think it's optimistic.
No. All right. Robert Lahey with Ardour Capital. Thanks so much, Robert.
Thank you, Jennifer.